In the bustling heart of New York City, where the streets hummed with the endless rhythm of taxis honking and pedestrians rushing by like leaves in a storm, Alex Thompson stepped into the quaint little diner on the corner of Fifth Avenue and Elm Street, a place he hadn't visited in over a decade. The air was thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon, a comforting aroma that pulled at the strings of his nostalgia, reminding him of simpler times when life wasn't a whirlwind of corporate meetings and empty hotel rooms. Alex, now a successful architect in his mid-30s, with sharp features softened by a well-groomed beard and eyes that carried the weight of unspoken regrets, had returned to the city for a business conference, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. It was a pilgrimage to the ghosts of his youth. As he slid into a worn leather booth by the window, overlooking the rain-slicked sidewalks where umbrellas bobbed like colorful mushrooms, he couldn't shake the feeling that fate had drawn him here, like an invisible thread tugging at his soul. The diner hadn't changed much. The checkered floors were still scuffed from countless footsteps, the jukebox in the corner played old Motown hits that echoed faintly over the chatter of patrons, and the walls were adorned with faded photographs of the neighborhood's history, capturing moments frozen in time. Alex ordered a black coffee from the menu, his mind wandering back to his childhood in the suburbs just outside the city, where he and his best friend, Emily Carter, had spent endless summers exploring abandoned lots, sharing secrets under starry skies, and dreaming of futures that seemed as vast as the ocean. Emily, with her wild curly hair that danced in the wind like autumn leaves, her infectious laugh that could light up the darkest days, and her eyes a deep emerald green that held the promise of adventures untold, had been his everything, the girl who understood him without words, the one who patched up his scrapped knees and shared his wildest imaginations. They were inseparable, two halves of a whole, until life pulled them apart when her family moved away during their sophomore year of high school, leaving behind a void that Alex had never quite filled. No matter how many relationships he tried to force into that empty space, he often wondered what became of her, if she still painted those vibrant landscapes that captured the essence of their shared dreams, or if she had found the happiness she deserved in some far-off place. As he sipped his coffee, bitter and hot against his tongue, a waitress approached his table, her notepad in hand and a polite smile on her face. But when their eyes met, time seemed to freeze, the din of the diner fading into a distant hum as recognition dawned like a sunrise after a long night. There she was, Emily, older now but unmistakably her, with those same emerald eyes that now held a weariness he didn't remember, her curls tied back in a practical ponytail, and her uniform stained with the day's spills. A far cry from the free-spirited girl he once knew. "Alex?" she whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in the breeze, the notepad slipping from her fingers to clatter on the floor, drawing curious glances from nearby tables. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the tile, his heart pounding in his chest like a drumbeat of forgotten melodies, and pulled her into a hug that felt like coming home after years of wandering. Tears welled in her eyes as she hugged him back, her body slight and fragile under his arms, and in that moment, the years melted away, leaving only the raw emotion of reunion. They sat down together, ignoring the impatient calls from the kitchen, and talked for what felt like hours, though the clock on the wall ticked mercilessly forward. Emily explained how life had taken unexpected turns after her family relocated to California. Her parents' divorce had shattered their stability, forcing her to drop out of art school to support her younger siblings, and a series of bad decisions, including a toxic relationship that left her with nothing but scars, had brought her back to New York, where she scrapped by as a waitress, dreaming of the day she could pick up her brushes again. Alex listened, his heart aching with every word, regretting the letters he never sent, the calls he never made, and as he shared his own story of climbing the corporate ladder only to feel emptier at the top, he realized how parallel their paths had been, both chasing illusions of success while longing for the authenticity of their childhood bond. The conversation flowed like a river long dammed, spilling over with laughter at home memories like the time they built a fort in the woods and pretended to be explorers conquering unknown lands, and tears for the lost time, with Emily confessing how she had often thought of him during her darkest nights, wondering if he remembered her at all. As the lunch rush died down, Alex insisted on treating her to a meal, and they shared a plate of pancakes drowned in syrup, just like they used to at sleepovers, the sweetness contrasting the bitterness of their regrets. He noticed the faint lines around her eyes, the calluses on her hands from long shifts, and a determination stirred within him to help her reclaim the life she deserved, perhaps offering her a job at his firm or reconnecting her with art galleries he knew. But beneath the joy of rediscovery, there was an undercurrent of something unspoken, a shadow in her eyes that she quickly averted whenever he probed too deeply about her current life, making him wonder what burdens she carried alone. As the afternoon sun filtered through the diner's windows, casting golden hues on their table, Alex felt the spark reignite in his soul, a hope that maybe, just maybe, this chance encounter was the universe's way of giving them a second shot at the friendship and perhaps Moria that had defined his happiest days. Little did he know, as he walked her to the door after her shift, promising to meet again soon, that the shock awaiting him would unravel everything he thought he knew about her, about himself, and about the fragile threads that bind us to our past. The next day dawned with a crisp autumn chill that nipped at Alex's skin as he made his way back to the diner, his mind a whirlwind of anticipation and unresolved questions from the previous encounter, the city awakening around him with the clamor of street vendors setting up their carts and the distant rumble of subway trains beneath the pavement. He had barely slept, replaying every moment with Emily in his head, her smile that still lit up the room like fireworks on a summer night, her voice that carried the melody of their shared history, and the subtle hesitations in her stories that hinted at deeper pains she wasn't ready to share. Arriving early, he claimed the same booth, his fingers drumming nervously on the tabletop as he scanned the room for her familiar figure, the diner already buzzing with morning regulars nursing their coffees and flipping through newspapers that rustled like dry leaves. When Emily finally appeared from the back, her apron tied neatly and a tray balanced in her hands, she spotted him and her face broke into a genuine grin, one that erased the fatigue etched in her features, and she hurried over, setting down a fresh pot of coffee as if no time had passed since their emotional reunion. They dove right back into conversation, this time delving deeper into the what-ifs of their lives, with Alex confessing how he had almost proposed to his college girlfriend but backed out because she wasn't Emily, and she admitting that she had kept a box of their old letters and drawings, hidden away like treasures in her tiny apartment. As the hours slipped by, unnoticed amid the laughter and shared silences, Alex suggested they take a walk after her shift, to revisit the old park where they used to skip stones across the pond. And Emily agreed with a spark in her eyes that made his heart soar. But as they strolled through the leaf-strewn paths, the air scented with earth and falling foliage, Emily grew quieter, her steps slowing as if weighed down by an invisible anchor, and when they sat on a weathered bench overlooking the water, she finally opened up about the real reason she had returned to New York, and not just for work, but to escape a past that haunted her like a relentless shadow. Tears streaming down her cheeks, she revealed that 5 years ago, she had given birth to a daughter, Lily, from that abusive relationship she had briefly mentioned, a little girl with curly hair just like hers and eyes that mirrored Alex's own childhood photos, but the father had abandoned them, leaving Emily to raise her alone while battling health issues that drained her savings and forced her into menial jobs. Alex's world tilted on its axis as he processed her words, his hand reaching out to wipe away her tears. But then came the shock that hit him like a thunderbolt. Emily confessed that Lily wasn't just any child through a twist of fate and a DNA test she had done out of curiosity years later. She discovered that the father wasn't her ex, but rather, in a moment of vulnerability during a brief reconnection visit in their early 20s that Alex had forgotten amid his own chaos, it was him. The revelation exploded in his mind like fireworks gone wrong. Memories flooding back of that one night they had shared after a chance meeting at a mutual friend's party, a night blurred by alcohol and unresolved feelings, which he had dismissed as a fleeting mistake, never knowing it had consequences. Stunned, he pulled away slightly, his breath catching in his throat as Emily pulled out a worn photo from her wallet, showing a 4-year-old girl with his dimpled smile and her mother's curls. a living embodiment of their unspoken love. Emotions crashed over him like waves as a shock at the secret kept for so long, anger at himself for not being there, guilt for the life she had endured alone, and an overwhelming surge of love for this child he never knew existed, a piece of him walking the world without his protection. Emily explained through sobs how she had tried to find him but feared rejection, how she had named Lily after his grandmother whom she adored, and how every day she saw echoes of their childhood friendship and her daughter's playful spirit. Alex's initial shock gave way to tears of his own, pulling her close as the park around them blurred into insignificance, and in that raw moment, he vowed to make things right, to be the father Lily deserved and the partner Emily had always needed. They spent the rest of the day meeting Lily at Emily's modest apartment, a cozy space filled with crayon drawings and stuffed animals, where the little girl shyly hid behind her mother's legs before warming up to Alex's gentle stories of adventures he and Emily once had. As evening fell, with Lily asleep in his arms for the first time, Alex felt a profound shift, the emptiness of his life filling with purpose, and he proposed they start anew, not as strangers reunited, but as a family forged from the ashes of their past. This shock had shattered him, but in its way came healing, a redemption story written in the stars they once gazed at together, proving that sometimes, the most unexpected twists lead to the happiest endings.